Hello guys. Welcome to Diablo the Primordial. This video is the continuation video after Sadistic Apido. So if you have not watched it, then please watch it. The link is in the description. And please check out my second channel Top Anime Sensei for the light novel of Tensura. So without any further delay, let's start. But before we start, please like, subscribe and press the bell icon so you don't miss the updates. In short, he said that Zero would surely encroach on the labyrinth. So Rimuru wants us to isolate parts of the labyrinth to make the bait easier to see. When this happens, he wasn't sure if Zero would be able to stay sane, but he believes it will have some effect on him. And so we had Zijin attack as soon as the labyrinth had been isolated. It wasn't a matter of there being an effect or not, we would ensure that there was an effect. Lord Rimuru was a little worried about having Zero and Zijin face each other, but Zijin seemed quite enthusiastic about it. Yes, though Zijin ended up having an easier time with it than we had expected. I understand all of that, and so, what did Lord Rimuru say? Ramirez and Benimaru both helped to answer Shuna's question, but they seemed reluctant to explain the most important part. Perhaps she had felt annoyed by this because Shuna asked them again in a harsher tone. Yes, he said, maybe we will be able to see his true nature. Indeed, not so much Zero's true nature, but Velda's, I think. Ramirez and Benimaru answered. In other words, once Zero had assimilated with the labyrinth, he would gain absolute superiority over any enemies that were inside. And if this happened, was it not likely that he would not differentiate from friend or foe and launch attacks at them all? That was Rimuru's prediction. On top of that, with Benimaru's strategy, Zijin had planted a sense of fear in Zero's heart. Zero would surely want power in order to defeat Zijin then. The general outline of the plan Benimaru made was based on the assumption that it would prey on anything it saw, regardless of it being friend or foe. That's why we made sure to have everyone retreat before Zero's assimilation with the labyrinth reached 100%. A Zero who was so consumed by fear and a thirst for power would attack Dino and the others without a doubt. That's it. By the way, he just passed 98%, so it should be any moment now. Is that so? Lord Rimuru was right, as expected. But then, what will happen if Zero is able to keep his sense of reasoning? If that happens, we will just toss the entire isolated labyrinth into the infinite loop. Everyone in the control room found this answer very satisfying. The only thing that could make this whole situation even better would be for Dino to be persuaded before Zero's encroachment was completed. But even then, Shuna noticed something. It didn't seem like there was enough reason for Rimuru to have dismissed the initial plan to attack. In the first place, if you could rid the place of invaders through an assault, then there was no reason to have Zero attack Dino. In that case, what was Lord Rimuru's true purpose? She looked at the excited Ramirez and came to a certain conclusion. I see. He doesn't want to have Dino killed. Rimuru and Dino had joked around and been friendly. And Ramirez. They had last separated as enemies, but perhaps Rimuru had still not wanted to kill Dino. She wasn't sure if it was because Ramirez had asked him, or if it was his own will, but Shuna was convinced that the truth was along those lines. Well, it would explain Ramirez's attitude quite a lot. She could now understand why they had gone out of their way for this more elaborate plan. And so there was nothing left now, but to wait for the result. What would Dino do? What would Zero? Regardless of which direction things will fall, everything would be in the palm of Lord Rimuru's hand. Shuna nodded with satisfaction and moved her gaze back to the large screen. In actuality, Rimuru had not been thinking so deeply when giving out the orders. The only thing he had really ordered was to be wary of encroachment of the labyrinth, which he had been able to predict through the finished Azi Dahaka ability. Also, he told them of his prediction for Zero's movements and ordered them to reduce any casualties. That was all. It was completely beyond any expectations of Rimuru that Zijin would push Zero so far. And one more thing. Just like Shuna had noticed, it regarded the treatment of Dino. For this, he had not said anything to Benimaru and consulted with Ramirez alone. Ultimately, he had decided to leave everything to her. Ramirez and Benimaru finished their explanations at about the same time that Zero was finishing his rapid assimilation with the labyrinth, after being driven frantic by his emotions. The assimilation rate is at 99%. We should call everyone back right about now. Ramirez began shouting. Benimaru barked orders. The attack unit, which had been given an explanation in advance, returned through teleportation after receiving the order. Given that there was a high possibility that a completely assimilated Zero could prevent them from teleporting out, there had been a need for them to be able to ascertain the exact moment they should leave. And their plan had succeeded. "We have just now returned, Lady Ramirez." Beretta addressed her as a representative of those who had returned. Everything had gone according to schedule. "Good, well done. Depending on how the enemy reacts, we plan to release the labyrinth into the infinite loop. However, in the event that we fail to accomplish this, we will have to enter an all-out war. I think that it goes without saying, that it will be incredibly dangerous to lure an enemy who has assimilated with an isolated space. In the event that we are forced to attack once again, all of you must be prepared and standing by." Everyone understood and agreed with Benimaru's words. How would Zero react? What would Dino do in turn? There was a need for them to be sure. After all, depending on the results, there was a high likelihood an intense battle would erupt. It was quite clear that there was not one person in the room who took the situation lightly. Also, it should be obvious without my having to say it, but in regards to Lord Rimuru being alive, that should remain strictly confidential. So saying, Benimaru finished his speech. It was to be expected, but they could in no way count on Rimuru to help them, and he had no intention of asking. He had accepted the order to defend the labyrinth as a supreme directive, and he would put his heart and soul into fulfilling it. This feeling was something shared by everyone who was gathered there. Just like Rimuru was searching for any movements by Velda, Velda was also probing for Rimuru. This was Rimuru's own decision and the reason that he did not return to the labyrinth. Seal had pointed out the possibility that they would wait for the moment when Rimuru would step foot in the labyrinth, and then isolate the entirety of it. It would surely be possible with Velda's abilities, she had said. Ramirez's labyrinth creation was an ability with a high degree of freedom, but it required a connection to this world. If that was severed, the labyrinth itself would drift off between the cracks of the dimensions. Seal had been convinced that there was no reason to believe that Velda could not do this if it was possible for Rimuru to. And if it did to come to that, while it would be possible to escape, it would take a tremendous amount of time. Returning after the world had been destroyed meant that you had still been defeated. That was what Rimuru had said when explaining to Benimaru and the others. Benimaru remembered those words now and nodded deeply. "Don't worry, Lord Rimuru. I will protect the labyrinth with my life." Determined, Benimaru moved his gaze back to the large screen. And so did Ramirez. Dino, that idiot, really, what was he doing at such a critical moment? The plan was already in its final stage. Dino and the others had become a target in the trap to lure Zero out. There is a possibility that Zero will maintain his sanity and cooperate with Dino and the others. There was also the possibility that Dino and the others would accept their fate and choose to become food for Zero. But the result that Ramirez desired was nothing so boring as those possibilities. Let's act like fools together again, experiment again, okay? Dino. That was Ramirez's wish. She believed in the plan that Rimuru had devised. She wished as if praying, that Dino would once again become their companion. Apito and Beretta, who were fighting against Dino, suddenly disappeared. Although they had sealed his legs and were continuously torturing him, it all came to an end all too suddenly. Telling himself that it was probably his imagination that the torture was slowly starting to feel good, he started thinking of the reason behind Apito and Beretta's disappearance. What's with them? Dino had thought, but it only took him a moment, as the reason soon became clear. He had detected an enormous energy response, approaching at an intense speed. As the floors inside the labyrinth differed in dimensions, it gets difficult to detect with magic detection if something is a few floors apart. However, that response was bare and showed no signs of concealment, and even while it was coming from a few floors apart, it caught Dino's detection. "Oi, Ramirez, what is going on here?" Dino yelled. And the reply to that was, for the time being, the fight is on hold. If you want to continue the fight, let's meet again later." An ambiguous reply. "I see, that Zero completed the labyrinth encroachment, so those guys are in a hurry to escape. Alright, nice, I am also probably saved with this." Judging that he was able to escape from the danger, Dino chuckled. But that was a very naive thought. Having assimilated with the labyrinth, just as Rimuru and the others predicted, Zero had completely lost his reasoning power. At the end, his sense of self was just cultivated through printing. In front of great power, he couldn't resist and became an existence which only acts on instinct. However, that was also according to what Velda had predicted. Zero will absorb the surroundings' energy, multiply and enlarge. And then, he will bring destruction upon that area. That was exactly the way to operate the completed Azidahaka. Even a strong being like Zero is nothing but an activation medium for it. The stronger the medium is, the stronger Azidahaka's rampaging state will be. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you guys have not watched my earlier videos, then please watch them. The links are in the description. And please check out my other channel Top Anime Sensei for the light novel of Tensura. And don't forget to like, subscribe and press the bell icon so you don't miss the updates.